Hi, ninth and 10th grade. We are starting a brand new chapter today called Parables. First, I want to remind you that you have some Proverbs that you need to finish up. Don't forget you are reading The Art of War. It is available online free as a PDF. You can also listen to it for free on YouTube. Make sure you get the homework done with the book. That is your job right now. I gave you a lot of time off last week just so you could spend it on reading The Art of War. I hope you're getting some really good information out of it and learning how to apply some of these things to your own life. It doesn't have to do solely with war. It's applicable to a lot of different areas of life. So pay attention very closely as you read. We are moving on to the next chapter of our book. It's parables. A parable is a short story that illustrates a spiritual or moral problem and its possible solution. The most famous parables are those taught by Jesus in the New Testament of the Bible. And in fact, usually when someone talks about a parable, they are referring specifically to the parables of Christ. He used these fictitious stories to lead people to spiritual truth. Sometimes people get very offended at the thought or the idea that there is fiction located within Scripture, and they will fight tooth and nail. No, Scripture is completely true. There is no fiction. You can have fiction and still have it be true, even though it's not nonfiction. When you look at a novel or a short story, there might be an underlying truth that is being told, even if the story itself is made up. A parable is a made-up story. It's not real people and real events that are being recorded. It is a story. It's a what if kind of story. And Jesus himself told these kinds of stories. So Jesus approves of fiction. Go ahead and read it. It's fine. But sometimes people get so adamant about, wanting to stand up for the Bible that they don't do it in the smartest way. They don't use critical thinking skills. And honestly, that's what parables are all about. They're all about honing those critical thinking skills in the Christian. So Jesus used fictitious stories to lead people to spiritual truth. There are a few others in Scripture, however, and I just noticed I misspelled Scripture there. That's brilliant. Like the first one in our text, it was spoken by one of Gideon's sons after another son killed 70 of his brothers in one day. Gideon had an incredible experience where he was used by God to wipe out the Midianite people after they had tried to wipe out the people of Israel. He then, after that experience, lived a life that wasn't following the laws of God. This is during the time of the Judges, where everybody did what was right in their own mind. And that's not a good place to get your right and wrong foundation. You need to go to Scripture instead. So Gideon, because he wanted to do what felt right to him, he had an ephod made. An ephod was really like a breastplate that was worn by the high priest, and it could be used to try to discern what God wanted people to do. It's a terrible comparison, but I'm going to have to make it. Think Ouija board, thinking of, will God somehow speak to me through this ephod, this piece of metal with jewels on it. It was really to try to find out, what the next plan was. Well, he got involved with multiple women. He had multiple children. Every time the Bible talks about a man being married to multiple wives, it ends in tragedy. There is no exception. If it's not a death in the family or an attempted murder in the family or a rape in the family, it is just constant chaos within the household. It is never presented as a good way to live. God allowed these men to do this as a way of expressing their culture, because a lot of the culture at the time had marriages with multiple partners, but he never presents it as, a good way, a peaceful way to live. So Gideon ends up having 70 sons with multiple wives. And then one of the women he was involved with was not even a full wife. She was a concubine, which is a kind of wife, but she has less power or prestige as the other wives. She's seen as more of a mistress. The son that he had with his concubine was a man named Abimelech. And he was basically treated like an outcast by his brothers whose moms were actually married to Gideon. See, never works out. Now, the son who's going to be speaking in this is one of the sons of one of the legal wives, and he's going to tell a parable about a government of trees. You see, what ended up happening was after Gideon died, Abimelech, the outcast son, went to war against the other brothers, captured them, all but one, and he put them to death all on the same day and on the same rock, with the exception of one brother who escaped and saw what was happening to his brothers, couldn't do anything. He was just one man against the world. But when all of that happened, he stood up and he said, I'm going to speak up. And he told this parable and basically told the people of Israel, look, there was a need for a leader. He chose the wrong leader because none of you would step up. So here we have, he's going to use trees as his example. Trees are so consumed with their own lives that they don't want to involve themselves in public service. And as a result, they accidentally allow a tyrant to rule for them. Now, in the Christian community, there are whole groups of people who say that Christians should not be involved in politics. That is found nowhere in the Bible at all. The idea of people working for others in the public sector, for governments, is always presented as a good thing. Multiple wives, not presented as a good thing. So the Bible does not teach that we need to stay out of politics. In fact, we should be actively engaged with what goes on in our society. Okay, so let's take a look at this first parable. And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal. Jerubbaal was the name that was given to Gideon when Gideon took that first step and he cut down his father's Baal altar statue. And his father stood up for him when the crowd was getting ready to attack him. He says, look, let Baal judge himself. And as a result, Gideon got this name that means let Baal judge, or let Baal take it into account. So Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, or Gideon, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren and communed with them and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it is better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, that's 70 people, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and flesh. So he goes to his mommy's hometown, sits with his grandfather and his uncles, and says, why don't you ask around and see if people would support me as a leader? Now, we could follow my father's other sons, 70 people. They would all be leaders in the community. Would you rather follow 70 men or one man? Especially since I'm related to you guys. Ask around, see what people say. And his mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is our brother. We'd much rather have somebody we know, someone who's related to us in that position of power. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver. That's a recurring motif here. We have the sons of Jerubbaal are 70 persons, 70 people. And then these uncles of Abimelech are each going to give him 70 pieces of silver, but they're going to give it to him out of the house of Baal Berith. This is the temple of their god. Baal goes by many different little monikers, and Baal Berith is one of them. They didn't give him each. That came out of the house of Baal Berith. Wherewith Abimelech hired vain and light persons which followed him. He chose people who were influencers, who would go around saying, I like Abimelech and he's pretty wonderful, and look at the selfie of me next to Abimelech's house. He went to his father's house at Ophrah. That's Gideon's house. His father's already passed away. He's gone to his father's house at Ophrah, and he slew his brothers, the son of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons, upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. So he killed all 70 brothers except one. That's what that verse is saying. All but one. The youngest, Jotham, is hiding and he is going to be popping out here any second. And all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all by the house of Milo. Sorry, it's Millo. And went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. So he kills his brothers in his father's own home and in his homeland. Then he goes back to Shechem, where the men who gave him the money were, and they crowned him there at Shechem. Now, when he was crowned by the pillar, which is a symbol of strength. When they told it to Jotham gets the news that this crowning is going on in Shechem. He went and stood in the top of Mount Gerizim. So he's up on a mountain looking down into the city of Shechem. And he lifted up his voice and cried and said unto them, Hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. Listen to me so that God will hear you when you're ready to confess. The trees, here is the parable. It's all about trees. The trees went forth on a time to anoint a king over them. And they said to the olive tree, Reign thou over us. But the olive tree said unto them, Should I leave my fatness, wherewith by me they honor God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? Okay, let's talk about an olive tree and how important it is. We read the Percy Jackson book. And before that, we read multiple myths about Athena and about the city of Athens. Remember when we studied in Greek mythology that Athena and Poseidon fought against each other for the right to have the city of Athens dedicated to them. In the book Percy Jackson, the daughter of Athena kind of makes fun of her mom and of not of her mom, of Percy's dad, because his gift to the city of Athens was a salt spring. And there is absolutely no use for a salt spring in the ancient world. None. I can't even think of one in the modern world, but there's no use for it. You can't drink it. You can't water with it. It would kill anything that it touched. So his idea of a salt spring as, king of the ocean or god of the ocean, it made absolutely no sense to the people of Athens. However, Athena gave them the olive tree. The olive tree you can see here on the left side. It's not the most attractive tree in the world. It has the highest pollen count of almost any tree. So when you get really sick in the springtime around here in California, it's usually because of olive trees blooming, because we have them all over California. We're on a Mediterranean climate. We're about the same latitude as Israel and the Middle East. So we have Athena giving the olive tree to the people, and then she discusses why it's such a good gift. It's not just a pretty tree. It bears fruit, and the fruit can be eaten. It can be harvested and pressed, and oil comes out of it. You can light that oil on fire and use it for fuel. You can use it for lamps. You can also use it on your skin. It's a skin care treatment, and you can cook with it. It's got all these different benefits. So we learn that from Greek mythology, and that helps us when we're studying the Bible. We're like, oh, okay, now we understand why the olive tree is so stinking important, because, we learned that in Greek mythology, that the olive tree can do all this stuff. So here is the olive tree. It's got all of this fatness. It's got oil in it. And he says, why should I leave my fatness, wherewith by me they honor God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? So the olive tree, who is the ultimate symbol of great trees, says, nah, I don't want to do it. Why would I leave what I have and go into public service? Don't want to. So the trees went to the fig tree, and that's the one on the right, and said, let's see. And the fig said, let's try that again. And the tree said to the fig tree, come thou and reign over us. Okay. Olive tree said no. We're going to go to the next bestest tree, the fig tree. Yay. Figs are great because you can eat them fresh, but the problem with fruit is you can't keep it forever. It decays. But people have learned pretty early on that you can preserve fruit by drying it. You just get the water out. The tree said to the fig trees, come thou and reign over us. But the fig tree said unto them, should I forsake my sweetness? Figs are very, very sweet. and my good fruit, and go to be promoted over the trees. So you can have fresh figs, you can have dried figs that will last you the whole winter long. They are a sweet, sugary high that you can get. And you have to remember, this is a time before chocolate was discovered. So people liked their sweets even then, even though they didn't have chocolate. So he's saying, why would I leave my good gig? I've got sweetness, I've got good fruit. Why would I do that to be promoted over the other tree? No, thank you. Then the tree said unto the vine, come thou and reign over us. Okay, now they're getting desperate. They go to a vine. This isn't even a legit tree. It's a vine. But the vine is a grapevine. That's what we're talking about here. Anytime you hear just vine alone, it's about grapes. So think about grapes. They can be juiced. And there was a way they learned how to preserve grape juice for a long time without it turning alcoholic. There was a method that they could use for that. But they could also let the juice ferment and make wine, which would last for dozens of years. And then the fruit itself could be eaten fresh. Everybody loves fresh grapes. Okay, not everybody, but I do. And then it can also be dried and make raisins. So the raisins and the figs, both dried fruit, both very sweet, both high energy. But the vine says, and the vine said unto them, should I leave my wine that cheereth God and man and go to be promoted over the trees? So even the vine is like, no, I've got a good gig going on here. Then the tree said unto the bramble, come thou and reign over us. They're desperate for a leader, and they go to the bramble. The bramble is the bush that you see on the right-hand side. It is taller for a bush, so it looks like a short tree. But you think about what a bramble does. Not much of anything. It just has pokey thorns. You can see the thorns in the photo below it. It has these long pokey thorns. Brambles were pretty much a waste product as far as people were concerned. They had to carefully cut them down and then burn them because they didn't want the brambles to spread into their fields because that took away good soil that they wanted to grow food on. So they really didn't like brambles. Brambles were hated. And then, of course, once they were cut down, they were burned. Okay, that's really important. So, the bramble said unto the trees, if in truth ye anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. The bramble is saying, okay, let's do this. I don't have anything else going on. I'm not running a business. I'm not, busy at a job that I have. Yeah, let me do this. This is actually a problem with politics. You end up with people who've never worked a real job. They've been in politics since college. They've never run a business, and then they want to tell everybody else how to do things. And it's like, it's not how that's done. And they're like, hey, you got to trust me. I'm head of your government. Okay, part of your government. So the bramble says unto the trees, if you're going to be my followers, if you're going to make me king, then come and put your trust in my shadow. There's not a lot of shadow going on in that picture. He says, if you don't completely and totally follow me, trust me, live in my shadow, make me bigger than everybody else, then let fire come out of the bramble. Again, this is what they did with brambles when they were clearing them out of fields. They set them on fire. But now he's saying, may fire come out of me, come out of the bramble. Not fire being put on me, but me setting everything on fire. So let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. The cedars of Lebanon were gigantic trees that were prized throughout the known world for their sweet smell and the fact that they repelled insects, and they lasted for a very long time when they were used in carvings, furniture, and plankings to build houses. Now, that's the end of the parable. So now Jotham is going to explain it. Now therefore, if you have done, he's talking to the men who voted in Abimelech, if you have done truly and sincerely in that you have made Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbabel and his house, and have done unto him according to the deserving of his hands. For my father fought for you and adventured his life far and delivered you out of the hand of Midian. This is a long accept. But he's like, look, if you really truly chose Abimelech because you believe he'd be a better king, if you really believe that he had the right to kill the 70 sons of my father, if you really think that my brothers deserve death at the hands of Abimelech after my dad helped you and delivered you out of the hand of Midian, and if you really believe it was okay for you to rise up against my dad's house this day, slain his sons upon one stone, and made Abimelech, the son of the maidservant, not even a legal wife, king over the men of Shechem because he is your brother. If all of that is on the up and up, if you have then dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbabel and with his house this day, then rejoice in your choice. Rejoice ye in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. He says, if all of this was done on the up and up, if you really truly believed it, that this was the right choice to make all the way around, everything you've done today, if you really think you're on the right track, then God bless. I hope you have a really good time with Abimelech, and I hope he really enjoys being your king. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech. Did you catch it? The fire that was supposed to come out of the bramble would be coming out of Abimelech. Let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem. These are the same men who made him king. He says, if you are wrong, if what you have done is wrong, then may you end up getting caught fire by Abimelech himself. After you've done all this work to put him on the throne, may the fire come out of him and burn you up. Okay. Devour the men of Shechem and the house of Millo, and let fire come out from the men of Shechem and from the house of Millo and devour Abimelech. May he set you on fire, and may you return the favor and set him on fire too. Okay, he told a parable that was really good. I mean, it's a great parable, especially when promoting the ideas of the most qualified people should be in public service, even if it means sacrifice on their behalf. And if you don't have the best people in public service who've made the sacrifice, who've walked away sometimes from billions of dollars of income to become a leader of a country, he says, well, you know what? If you really believe that having people with absolutely no experience and no good background as your leader, then you deserve what you get. Okay? Next, on 21 says, and Jotham ran away and fled and went to Beer and dwelt there for fear of Abimelech his brother. He knew not to stay in Israel, so he moved out of the country. When Abimelech had reigned 3 years over Israel, 3 years, then God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, and the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. Remember, Abimelech had gone to them and asked them for money to make him king, and now he's king, and they're like, well, where's our stuff? And so they started to have this evil spirit between them. This picture, by the way, is Baal. This is one of the pictures of Baal. We don't have a lot of representations of Baal because the Israelites would have purges on occasion where they would destroy like every temple and every grove and the idols of Baal. And so we have very few that are actually left behind. So we get, every once in a while, we'll find one and we're like, we found what Baal looks like. That the cruelty done to the 70 brothers of 10 sons of Jeroboam might come, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech and their brother, which slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, which aided him in the killing of his brethren. So here we have God saying, now there's an evil spirit between this man and his brothers because of what he did to his father and his brothers. So we are seeing that God was not pleased with what Abimelech did. And this is exactly what Jotham was talking about. Look, if you did what was right, then I hope you guys have a really good life together. And if you did what was wrong, may God curse you by making sure that you catch each other on fire. Seriously. Okay, so, and the men of Shechem set liars in wait for him in the tops of the mountains, and they robbed all that came along the way by them, and it was told Abimelech. So the men of Shechem are setting a trap for him, and they're starting it with at the tops of the mountains, along the little pathways and highways where people trade, they are setting up robbery gangs. and they're waiting for Abimelech to come and clean them out, because if they can choose the spot where they can fight against Abimelech, then they can be more prepared, especially if they're up on a mountain waiting for him to come up. They have the high ground. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, came with his brethren and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. So here's another guy who's going to try and become the next king, Gaal. And they went out into the fields and gathered their vineyards and trode the grapes and made merry and went into the house of their God and did eat and drink and cursed Abimelech. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, said, "Who is Abimelech? Like, why are we following this guy anyway? And who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is not he the son of Jerubbaal, and Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for why should we serve him?" It's like, why are these guys in charge? How come I'm not in charge? And would to God this people were under my hand. So here is Gaal saying, I should be the next king. Then would I remove Abimelech. And he said to Abimelech, increase thy army and come out. So he actually sends a message to Abimelech saying, come and fight, put him up. And when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, his anger was kindled, because Zebul is actually on Abimelech's side, and he is angry that Gaal is trying an insurrection in his own town. So Zebul, he sent messengers to Abimelech privately, saying, behold, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his brethren be come to Shechem, and behold, they fortify the city against thee. So here is the ruler of the city saying, these guys are fortifying the city. That means they're building walls, or they're building ramparts. They're getting ready for a fight. They are digging in here. Now therefore, up by night, thou and thy people that is with thee, and lie in wait in the field. So here is, where's his name? Zebul is saying, I want you to come right now under cover of night and come into the field, lay in wait in the field outside of the city. And it shall be that in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, thou shalt rise early and set upon the city. And behold, when he and the people that is with him come out against thee, then mayest thou do to them as thou shalt find occasion. It's like, if you are out there first thing in the morning before they're really ready, then they'll come out and you can attack them. And Abimelech rose up and all the people that were with him by night, and they laid wait against Shechem in 4 companies. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entering of the gate of the city. And Abimelech rose up and the people that were with him from lying in wait. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, the leader, behold, there come people down from the top of the mountains. And Zebul said unto him, thou seest the shadow of the mountains as if they were men. Because it's just before light. And so he sees movement. He goes, what's going on here? And the leader of the city is like, you're just seeing shadows. And Gaal spake again and said, see, there come people down by the middle of the land, and another company come along by the plain of Menonium. And then said Zebul unto him, where is now thy mouth, wherewith thou saidest, who is Abimelech, that we should serve him? Is not this the people that thou hast despised? Go out, I pray now, and fight with them. So he's like, oh yeah, it does look like we're under attack. Well, you wanted to fight, go fight. And Gaal went out before the men of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him, and many were overthrown and wounded, even unto the entering of the gate. And Abimelech dwelt at Arumah, and Zebul thrust out Gaal and his brethren, that they should not dwell in Shechem. So the governor, or the leader of the town, sent these men out. He got his town back. And it came to pass on the morrow that the people went out into the field, and they told Abimelech. What people? It looks like it's the people of Shechem. And he took the people and divided them into 3 companies, and laid wait in the field, and looked, and behold, the people were come forth out of the city, and he rose up against them and smote them. Now Zebul, who thrust out Gaal and his brethren, so they can't dwell in Shechem, there are people that go to Abimelech and say, guess what? Zebul is looking to take you out too. He's just upset that Gaal and his brethren got to you first. So the next morning, the city gates open, people come out, and Abimelech goes after the entire city. even though this is the same city that said, hey, somebody's coming after you. You need to protect yourself. Come and, I'll help you. I'll hook you up with a really good strategy. Now it looks like the leader of the city was doing the same thing, or somebody misinformed Abimelech. So he took the people, divided them into 3 companies, and laid wait in the field. Sorry, let me finish this. And they told Abimelech, and he took the people, laid wait in the field and looked, and behold, people were come forth out of the city, and he rose up against them and smote them. And Abimelech and his company that was with him rushed forward and stood in the entering of the gate of the city, and 2 other companies ran upon all the people that were in the fields and slew them. These are the people who even told him, hey, the city is not on your side anymore. He slew even those who gave him that information. And Abimelech fought against the city all that day, and he took the city, and he slew the people that was therein, and beat down the city, and sowed it with salt. And when all the men of the tower of Shechem heard that, they entered into a hold in the house of the god Berith. This is the place where he had gotten his start, but he goes and he kills everybody that he can get a hold of in that city, and then has the fields around it sown with salt so that nothing can grow there, so there can't be another city that crops up right away. And it was told Abimelech that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. And Abimelech got him to Mount Zalmon, he and all the people that were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand, and he cut down a bough from the trees, and took it and laid it on his shoulder, and said to the people that were with him, what you have seen me do, make haste and do as I have done. So he hears that all the leaders of the city are in a tower, and he goes to a neighboring mountain with a forest on it and starts cutting down a tree, puts it on his shoulder, and walks away. And all the people likewise cut down every man his bough and followed Abimelech, and put them to the hold, that's where the tower is, and set the hold on fire upon them. So all the men of the tower of Shechem died also, about 1,000 men and women. So all the people that were collected in this tower died from smoke inhalation and from being burned. Now, this thing where he takes a branch and starts walking with it toward the city, Shakespeare is going to use this in one of his most famous plays called Macbeth. The king who had overthrown a previous king was told that he would not be defeated for as long as he didn't see Birnam Wood walking his way. And he's like, well, woods don't walk, so I'm okay. Well, it turns out that the woods did walk, because his enemy, Macduff, cut down trees and he and his men were carrying those trees in front of them and getting closer and closer to Macbeth's castle and hiding behind these trees. So after a while, when they got close enough, he's like, well, those woods are a lot closer than they were yesterday. That's when he figured out Birnam Woods was walking, and he was in big trouble. And Shakespeare gets this idea from this. Okay, all the people, let's see. Then went Abimelech to Thebes and encamped against Thebes and took it. But there was a strong tower within the city, and thither fled all the men and women and all they of the city, and shut it to them and gat them to the top of the tower. So here's another city who has a strong tower, and everybody gets in the tower. That's exactly what they did in Shechem. They're going to do it again in Thebes. And Abimelech came into the tower and fought against it, and went hard against the door of the tower to burn it with fire. It worked in the last place. Hey, everybody, grab some branches. We're going to burn this one out too. But they couldn't quite get close enough to it. And he was pushing and pushing and pushing to get close to the tower to put the wood there so he could set it on fire. And a certain woman, we don't know her name, but we know she was a woman, she cast a piece of millstone upon Abimelech's head, and all to break his skull. Now, this picture, I like it for one reason, because it shows you what a millstone is. A millstone is a round stone, and it's usually paired with another stone that it sits on top of, or it's on the bottom, one or the other. And then people can put grain into the hole in the center, and then as it grinds it can grind the grain and make flour. A woman did not throw this over the wall. A man didn't throw this over the wall. This is a gigantic millstone. That is solid rock. Nobody's going to be able to pick that up. The Bible clearly says it was a piece of millstone, so it would look like a big chunk of rock. However, the artist probably realized that if you just use a big chunk of rock, people would be like, I thought it was supposed to be a piece of millstone. That doesn't look like a piece of millstone. So I'm sure the author or the artist gave us, the millstone itself, so we'd have a clearer comprehension of what was being thrown. There's also an issue with it's just Abimelech all by himself and everybody else is dead. There should be a lot of torches and a lot of people. But again, we have to look at what the artist is trying to tell us. He is trying to get us to understand that this is Abimelech getting hit in the head with a millstone. He did get his skull broken, but he survived that. But he knew he was going to die. And so he called hastily unto the young man, his armor bearer, and said to him, draw thy sword and slay me, that men say not of me, a woman slew him. And his young man thrust him through, and he died. Okay. Armor bearers are the ones that actually carried like the big shield, the tall shield. And he's not here. Also, he was in charge of all of the equipment. But you notice that there's no real hesitation here. He says, you've got Abimelech saying, draw your sword and slay me, that men say not of me, a woman slew him. So he knew it was a woman who threw that rock. Okay. But that was really embarrassing to him. They'd be killed by a woman. Okay. You think that just having your skull crushed should be enough of an issue that you'd be thinking of right now, but no, he's got to protect his reputation. I'm using reputation in quotes. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed every man into his place. Oh, he's dead. We can go on with our lives now. Thus God rendered the wickedness of Abimelech, which he did unto his father in slaying his 70 brethren. And all the evil of the men of Shechem did God render upon their heads, and upon them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal. The thistle, in this case it was Abimelech, set them on fire. Fire came out from them, and then the very next, they dropped a rock on his head. So we can see that the prophecy was fulfilled in this parable, but it's an interesting parable. It's from the Old Testament, and we don't really hear it enough. I know we have a lot of war issues with this one. I get that, but the parable itself is really important when it comes to being part of your society, being part of your culture, and really wanting to do what's better for the people around you in public service. Okay, that's it for today. Don't forget, do a little bit of Art of War every day. I'm not going to give you another, lecture until Friday. Usually at school we're in class Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm giving everybody Wednesdays off to kind of catch up with everything. So I'm just going to do Mondays and Fridays for right now, because I know you're still reading Art of War, and I'm trying to kind of go easy right now. Once Art of War is done, then we'll do a little bit more. You are all done with your history books, with your history lectures, but you do need to get your history books finished. And that's also one of the reasons I'm kind of going slow this week. We will be picking up after this week. But I just want to remind you to get your history books completely done. Everything needs to be finished, and then turn it into the office. Mrs. Rule is constantly sending out turn-in day information. So if you don't have an email from Mrs. Rule saying when turn-in day is, you can call the office and ask them. I'm sure they wouldn't mind whatever day is most convenient for you to go and turn something in, you can do that. But I know they're trying to keep some of that, keep a lot of people out. So stay safe, and I will talk to you again on Friday. Don't forget to read Art of War, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.